So once again, good afternoon and welcome to ACE, How to Design Multi-Cloud Network Using Design Pillar session. My name is Saad Mirza. I'm with the Aviatrix Solutions Engineering team. I have Hamad Alam and Shazad Ali. All three of us will be walking you guys through all these design pillars in the next couple of hours. With that, I will get us started with the introduction of ACE. Right? So first of all, what is ACE? ACE is the highest level of ACE certification track, right? You guys already aware of ACE Associate, ACE Professional. There are a couple of more like IAC and Cloud Ops, and ACE is basically the top tier certification track which we have. So what ACE focuses on? It focuses on the public cloud and the hybrid cloud network design based on the design principles which we are going to discuss. It's also enable you to understand and ask and gather the technical requirements and the business requirements as well when you are architecting and designing the cloud networks. Who is it for? It's for you guys, the network architects, the solutions architect, who has minimum of 1 year of experience designing and operationalizing the Aviatrix platform. It doesn't matter whether you are the single cloud or in the multi-cloud environment. Okay, so how can you become ACE? You can become ACE. The first step for you is to review the ACE blueprint. So what is that ACE blueprint? The blueprint means overview of the program. What is this all about, right? And how can you submit your interest? You want to become the ACE certified. You have to show your intent like, hey, I want to do this thing. What are the things which you need in order to prepare for ACE? All those things you can find in ACE, which the location I have already forwarded to you guys in the invite. Once you went through the ACE blueprint, then there is something which is you need to submit the document, the design document to us. How are you going to submit the design document? There is a design submission document template available on our website as well. You need to download that. That is in the Word format, and then you start plugging in all your design aspects in that. And then after that, you have to submit that over to the ACE panel. At that point, you are actually making yourself available for defending your design in person. So how is that process going to look like? Once you are in person, then you will be provided about 10 minutes for a presentation about your design, and then 35 minutes to defend. So panel will be asking you questions regarding all those design pillars, which we are going to discuss during this session, and then you will be defending it. After that, panel is also going to provide you an impromptu design. That design, we will give you certain requirements. Based on those requirements, you will be given an opportunity for 15 minutes. Then you can ask any questions you want, and regarding the design, of course, and after that, you start building your design. So 30 minutes to start building your design, working on it, putting it on the whiteboard, and then the panel is going to ask again some questions for 20 minutes on your impromptu design. Okay, so before I move forward with the housekeeping, any questions on this? Let me turn on the video as well. So do we have any questions on this?
So what is the total duration? There are two designs. One is what you're defending, and the other one is impromptu. What is the total time?
Yeah. So the first design is, if you can take a look at this, then 110 minutes for the first design, which is your actual design. And then the second design, I'm sorry, let me take it back. So the first design, which you have been working on, you submit your design document. When you come to us, then in person, then you will be provided like 10 minutes to present and 35 minutes to defend. So 45 minutes in total for the first design. The second design, you will be having about 110 minutes for impromptu design. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so let's move forward. So a little bit of housekeeping. All of you guys on this call are double certified, double Aviatrix certified, ACE Associate and ACE Professional. So in this session, we are not going to teach you what is active mesh or Aviatrix segmentation or Firenet and all those kind of details, because you already know how to do all those kind of things. This session is all about the design pillars, how you can design with using the Aviatrix platform. And that is basically what you need in order to submit your design. If you have any questions in the process, the best thing you can do is to send us your questions using the forum, ACE forum, which is also when we are going to share these slides with you, then you can have the information about that as well. That is on the community, just an FYI. Okay, in order to keep everybody safe, we are going to follow the CDC guidelines very strictly. So wearing the mask over the nose and mouth is going to be the mandatory to keep everybody safe. All right, so what are these design pillars? The design pillars are availability, the manageability, performance, security, cost optimization, business continuity. As I mentioned previously, like each one of us, Hamad, myself, and Shazad, we will be covering 2 of those design pillars in the next hour and a half or hour and 45 minutes. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Shazad. Shazad, do you want to take over?
Yeah, Saad. Let me share my screen. Can you guys see my screen here?
Yes.
Yes, Shazad.
Let me minimize this thing. All right, so if we, let me go back to, yeah, so Saad actually covered the design pillar. So when you're preparing your document, obviously you have to have certain design pillars in mind to create a proper network architecture in the cloud, right? So these are the ones that we will be discussing in details. Now, when you look at these design pillars, how do you actually go deeper into each one of them and gather certain requirements or know more about each and every pillar, right? So in order to actually gather this information, we have divided this information gathering in kind of a 4 different steps, right? So, and this actually, if you have been working in the industry for long, you know this is like common sense, but it's good to have a kind of a formal picture or a mental picture so that you don't miss any when you're submitting your design to us, because we will be looking into that, right? So the first thing is requirement gathering. So when you start building your design, obviously you will be talking to different stakeholders. It could be the networking guy, it could be security, operations, or maybe in the application space. So it's very important that you gather the requirement in order to build a proper design, a future-proof design, right? Because when you're designing something, it's not just for today, it's for tomorrow and for days to come. So you not only need to gather all the technical requirements like the bandwidth, throughput, latency, and whatnot, but also as an architect, you need to have a business requirement listed down as well. Because if you're just building something for the sake of building it, and it looks technically really well, but if it is not aligned to the business objectives, that's not the design we will consider, right? And also, don't try to boil the ocean, right? Just because something is technically possible, it should not be part of your design. So again, we will be asking you very point questions about, okay, why did you pick direct connect, for example, or why are you not using the VPN service to connect your branches to the cloud, right? Why are you using SD-WAN, right? So you have to have a business justification for that as well. Now, moving on, the second thing is constraints. So again, we are not expecting it to be 100% perfect. And you guys know that they're always constrained when you're designing or proposing something. There are always pros and cons into one versus another approach, right? So what we are looking here is basically the constraint or the roadblocks that could limit what the business objective is, right? It could be a technical product limitation, could be a limitation within CSP, for example, a very common route limitation. It could be something non-technical, could be a business roadblock. For example, I have my Cisco routers in the on-prem and I cannot replace them. And unfortunately, those Cisco routers or switches, they cannot support the IPsec protocol. So that becomes like a business plus technical limitation. So we want you to think about that and mention it in your design that you're submitting. And obviously, when you're defending your design in front of us on the fly design, then we will also ask you a question about the constraints, okay? Then we are moving on to the assumption area. Now, when you're creating this design, sometimes you have to make assumptions. We like not to make too many assumptions, right? Otherwise, the design will just fall apart. But if there are certain assumptions that you make some educated guesses, that's totally fine. And we will ask you a question about, okay, what was your thought process when you were making those assumptions? And those those assumptions should be in line with what you are creating for us, right? The last but not the least is the risk factors. So if you are designing something, what are the risks? For example, I have seen enterprises, they pick direct connect or express route, and we know those links are not encrypted in nature, right? So that's a risk. So the most important thing is to document those risks in your document, because that could backfire in future, right? Because let's say you acquire or you are acquired by another company and their business is totally healthcare and very security centric. And then they might ask you, like, why did you propose this design or accept this design when you knew that the direct connect or express route is not encrypted? Then you would have your, kind of a documented proof saying, yeah, this is something we, provided to the stakeholders. It was a risk and it was approved. It was, assumed that, okay, we will be taking that risk. And then that's how, we got to this design. So very important that for each and every design pillar, make sure you have all these evaluated properly. Any questions so far?
One question. Sorry, go ahead. Somebody else's.
I was just saying, during while we are presenting, feel free to put questions on chat as well. But Shiva, please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Hamad. So at the end of this, there will be a problem statement given to us to come up with the design, right? Or is there a problem statement given to us at the end of this so that we can fill the blueprint template you guys given us and ready for submission before 23rd?
No, so we are not giving you a problem statement here. So what Saad explained you in the beginning, that when you come on site, there are two parts, right? So basically, the first thing is that you need to submit your design. We are not giving you the problem statement. It is your design that you're submitting to us. It could be a design that you completed for your current company, right? Obviously, you can remove the confidential information from it. And that's what you're submitting, right? And then blueprint document or the sample document will give you or guide you what you need to provide as part of this. Obviously, there has to be a lucid chart or some kind of a diagram explaining your architecture, and then some verbiage around these areas that we mentioned, the design pillars and how to evaluate those design pillars. So we are expecting you to provide that to us. We are not giving you any problem statement for that portion. The second portion is when you come in, and we give you this on the fly design, and then we will give you a problem statement saying, okay, this is what it is. And how do you actually capture the information? How would you approach the design? And basically it's about, checking your thought process. Again, we are not looking for the perfect design. We know that it's a very short duration. Obviously, when you are in a proper design exercise. It's a lengthy process, spanning across weeks and days and whatnot. But at least as an architect, you should have a proper thought process, and this is exactly what we will be checking on that day.
Okay, got it. Thanks a lot for the clarification. So I was under the impression we might be given. So we can pick and choose our customer problems that we wanted to give them a design on this. I can absolutely do that with some confidentiality restrictions. Okay, that's what I think you guys are saying. Oh, got it.
Yeah.
And it could be a real design, or it could be a fictitious composite design. As an example, you may have worked on multiple customers, and you may kind of come up with something which is very close to real. We are not going to ask you if it's fictitious or it's real, but we will. I mean, you'll go through the process as if it is a real design, and all of the aspects are covered.
Yeah, and your design is not going to be shared to any other attendee. It's going to be staying within this team.
Okay, that's another follow-up question, but that answers. So yeah, we try to, because I'm working with the customer where they have this Aviatrix a strong possibility. I'm going to work on that one. It serves both purposes for me. Prepare for this at the same time, advising the customer the right way. Okay, thank you.
No problem, Siva. All right, so now let's talk about each and every design pillar and how do you actually approach those, right? So the first one is availability. So when we talk about availability, what exactly are we discussing for availability? So, when you're designing something or architecting something, the availability can have different facets. It could be application availability, could be something completely non-technical, some financial application, or some processes where you need to create the availability. Our focus is obviously availability for your networking and security infrastructure, right? So that you can support the application SLA. We all know that the networks that we are building is to support the applications that are deployed. This is where the businesses are getting the revenue and whatnot. So as a networking architect or cloud network architect, it's our responsibility to provide the proper availability based on the business requirement to support that, right? And in most of the cases, when you look at, it's about avoiding the single point of failure, right? So you have multiple links, for example, or multiple firewalls or multiple gateways in order to provide that availability. Now, I'm giving you some examples here, right? It's not like exhaustive, so it could be more. There could be more things that you might take into consideration, but just for the example, where exactly you need to consider those availability elements. So the first thing is obviously the infrastructure component. This is where you have your Aviatrix controller, you have gateways, you have third-party services like firewalls, load balancers, and whatnot. So that should be covered as part of your design. Then the connectivity itself, network connectivity between the regions, within single cloud, across multiple clouds, when you're connecting to on-premise resources like your physical branches, your physical SD-WAN, or if you have third-party services, that's also something you should take into account. CSP itself could go down. We have seen it, like AWS massive outages and whatnot. So you need to have that availability angle in your design as well. Provide multi-cloud optionality, or your architecture, so that your applications can stay alive. And then if you are connecting to some third-party SaaS type services or CASB or SASE type services where your traffic is going towards somewhere else, how do you actually cover availability there, right? Now, how do you actually do that? Obviously, you have taken the ACE Associate and ACE Pro courses. You have seen, we have discussed this number of times, where availability could be impacted just because a CSP might have some limitations in the route table, or might have some limitations in the BGP or some other areas. So this is how you need to think about, right? So you're providing multiple clouds. That's one way to provide availability. Then you have, within single cloud, you have multiple regions. So are you basically deploying your applications and infrastructure pieces across multiple regions, right? If a region goes down, how do you actually handle that? What about the AZ, right? Because within a region, you have the AZ. So are you covering that, right? And then when you're building these infrastructure, they could be built with active standby or active-active, right? If you look at Aviatrix, we are providing you this active-active network with our active mesh technology, but with some third-party services that might not be possible, right? Maybe they only support active standby. If you are adding those type of services in your architecture, please be prepared to answer why you are not using active-active. Or if you have a single point of failure, you should have a very clear risk identified over there, right? Same goes to these firewalls. Obviously, security is extremely important. If it is not an active-active design, and if you have single point of failure, it could be a real big problem for your architecture. When you have a number of different gateways or different links, are they highly available? Do you have BGP? If you're using BGP for multiple links and whatnot, are you using AS-path prepend, or is something else is being used? What if your Equinix link goes down or your WAN has some outage? So think about all those external services as well from the availability perspective. Okay, so if you look at this architecture, obviously this is a sample. Your architecture diagram could be different, totally different, could be very small, could be very large. So that's totally okay. But this is a very, I would say, blueprint type architecture where this ACE organization deployed their resources in different regions across the globe. And they're using multiple clouds, AWS and Azure, in order to achieve all the availability that we discussed before. So what are the potential areas where you need to consider this availability? So if you look at Aviatrix, the controller, obviously controller must be deployed in the highly available fashion. So, right, so that's there. Gateways are always deployed in pair. So you don't have a single point of failure. Then you have the active mesh 2.0 running, which provides the active-active connectivity between your spoke and your Aviatrix transit gateway. When you are connecting to on-premise, you have an option to deploy multiple direct connect, for example. If the business does not justify that, then at least you need to have one direct connect, and then as a backup, you could use a VPN circuit so that your critical applications are available in case of any direct connect failure or Express route or Google Cloud interconnect failure. Then when you're connecting these clouds together across, you have multiple options, right? So Aviatrix Transit can build this active-active connectivity between different clouds or between different regions. Well, what if this connectivity is impacted due to something, right? So there is a service that went down in AWS or Azure, and this link is down. So how exactly are you reaching out to the other cloud? So you have this backup path available to reach to the other side, okay? The next generation firewall, are you deploying it in a centralized fashion? If you are, then are you using active standby? You don't have to use Firenet, right? That's totally okay. If it is not within your business requirement, you might be using the firewalls within the, these VPCs and VNets, but then you have a very clear justification of what if this VPC goes down or a firewall goes down, how is it going to impact your application availability, right? So make sure to answer those type of questions. And that's pretty much what I wanted to cover for this. Any question on this availability?
In your diagram on AWS Region 3, your transit isn't connected to anything. What can you? Is that intentional on the right?
No, I think due to some animation, I think this was not painted properly, but it should be connected.
I meant over here, but the animation, I just think was not there.
Yeah. So
that makes sense now.
Yeah, it should be connected. Thanks for pointing that out, man.
And this might be a silly connection. I just don't know the abbreviation DX. I'm assuming that just means you have multiple tunnels to your on-prem on the left side of the diagram there.
Direct connect.
Oh, it's just direct connect. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. One question related to this availability or anything else. I see the template. Template clearly talks about requirements from 1 to n. Again, that is completely our choice to how many requirements you want to solve in your particular design, right? In the template you guys have uploaded along with the blueprint, first thing obviously starts with the requirement statements.
Right.
So whatever we're going to show high availability architecture, literally we can pick and choose any number of requirements. There is no minimum requirements we need to go for our design to qualify.
No, there is no minimum requirement, I would say, for your design to qualify, as long as you can justify it. If it is falling within your business requirement, if it is a design that can support the application SLA, application availability, and all the other pillars, I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to be prepared to answer. Go ahead, Ahmad.
Yeah. So one quick thing is that just, the scale should be, as it's mentioned in the blueprint, it should be complex enough, right? Like it shouldn't be that, hey, I have 10 VPCs or even 100 VPCs on a single transit, and I don't need any firewalls, and I don't need any segmentation, and I don't need anything else, and that's the design, right? So just keep in mind that the design should be something which is what a typical enterprise require, which is it includes network, it includes security, it includes isolation, it includes all those key things that a typical enterprise requires.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. And on the same lines, actually, if you are submitting a very simple design, you're not doing justice to yourself when you are attempting the second phase of the defense, right? Because the second phase of the defense, you will encounter all those questions from us, or a design which is most likely going to be a complex design. So I think it's a good practice session for you guys to take into account.
Yeah, I agree that, right? One of the things is I'm actually thinking about actual customer problem, which is obviously complex in itself. So the reason for me to ask that question is the availability architecture that you're showing, there will be multiple views of this based on the number of requirements we try to solve in that exercise that we're going to submit. So I'm just making sure you guys okay with the additional, if I do like 3-4 slides of this, you guys should be okay. That's what I'm asking.
No, we are okay with that. And then if it is a very simple design today, requirements are very simple, one region, one cloud. Then I will have to go back to my earlier comment about the future-proof design, right? If it is a future-proof design or not, right? If it is not satisfying this requirement, then I have to basically, I will be worried as a business owner.
Yeah, I'm more worried on the other side. If too much information thrown at you, that's where I'm more worried. Okay, cool. Okay. Thank you.
No, don't worry about it. We will manage it. We will, you put your information the way you want to present. And if you want to speed you up, we will speed you up. If you want to skip you something because we know that, you are there. So we will not like grill you on something which you already know, for example.
Yeah. Okay. Because the document itself is 18-page length. So I just want to make sure.
Okay, so now moving on to manageability. So when you're proposing a design, obviously it has to be managed by different teams, right? There could be different stakeholders managing it. So you need to cater those requirements as well, right? And when it comes to managing, you have both Aviatrix managed and non-Aviatrix managed component in your design, right? What we are actually looking for is how do you actually satisfy the business requirement to manage and operate this entire the cloud networking landscape, and how you can actually make it part of your CI/CD pipeline, because you like it or you don't like it, the cloud world is all agile, is very fast, is automated, right? So pretty much 99.9% of the time, the enterprises that we talk to, they are making it part of their CI/CD pipeline to run, manage, and operate, because they want to avoid human errors, because we know human errors are the #1 cause for outages and also for security breaches. So you need to think about that as well, and provide the proper automation for your cloud network. From the day 2 operations point of view, you're deploying your network in single cloud across multiple clouds. So the management should be in compliance with your policies. it should be able to pass your audit. You should have proper tooling available to manage and operate your network, right? So where exactly are those areas where we will be focusing on mainly? So again, the management of your networking component, how exactly the VPCs are being managed, new VPCs created or removed, or new tenant coming in and then and gone, how you exactly are doing it. Is it using the Terraform? Is it using the CLI, or what exactly is happening there? If you have multiple cloud, how you are actually doing it? Is it causing more problems? Is it slowing your application availability down there? So we will be asking questions there. Security again is extremely important. It should be part of your architecture. If you have deployed next generation firewall, how exactly is the management done here? Is your Panorama, for example, running in on-prem? How exactly you are connecting to your Panorama, or your Panorama connecting to your VM series in the cloud? If you have a traffic coming in or going out, exactly how it's being managed, right? Is it following your day-to operations guideline or the needs for your compliance team? So we'll be looking into that. If you're connecting to other third-party services, the on-prem data centers, branches, or SD-WAN, what is your approach there? Are you using, for example, BGP over LAN? Or if you're using GCP, are you using NCC type of services to connect to your on-prem or premise branches, and how exactly you're managing it, right? So the Copilot obviously will play a very important role there, because we know that these cloud providers don't have a proper solution for management and for visibility. So you should expect questions on the Copilot side of the house, right? How exactly are you going to do this? Like I said, you can have the user interface, you can have your automation scripts. Terraform obviously is very popular, and then you have CLIs and APIs. So you need to be prepared to answer those. If you have third-party services like ServiceNow, or if you have a syslog system somewhere out there, or you need to know how exactly those services are integrated. If you are sending notification to someone somewhere else, how exactly it was done, and things of that nature. All right, so this is the architecture diagram where we will be focusing on these operational or manageability aspects. So the first thing obviously is your controller. Controller can be managed by UI with Terraform API, right? And then you have your CSP console to manage and operate. So how exactly you're managing it? Are you using the UI? Are you using the Terraform? If you're using the Terraform, okay, so how exactly is your management flow looks like, right? It's not like we are going into the depth of like how your script was, what are the variables you were using, but like as an architect, you should know, like, yeah, I have my management flow, or this is how I have my runbook, where the Terraform is being called to create the VPC first. I'm using the native Terraform for AWS, and then I use the Terraform for AWS to manage the route table, or to create the firewalls, or to manage the lifecycle of those firewalls. So those type of questions, you should expect those in your defense area, right? And then you have the third-party services, could be a load balancer, could be a next generation firewall. So that's where you should pay attention to. Again, the animation was the issue here. All right, so that's all I wanted to cover for my section. Any question before we move on?
Only one question here. Let's say the architecture we're presenting is complex enough, covers all the main things, but for some reason we don't have something like SD-WAN. That's not a requirement, isn't it?
No,
we cover
not
everything
at all.
else, may not be a use case for the customer. We can skip SD-WAN.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it's not a requirement to have SD-WAN in your architecture.
Okay, thank you.
So just one thing, that's totally right thing to say, like, I mean, if you don't have the SD-WAN, totally fine, you're not going to include that, but be prepared. We might give you an impromptu design with the SD-WAN in there. So that could be one thing which you have to be prepared for that.
Yeah, got it. That part I got it. Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
All right, so let's go next topic, security, right, Saad?
Yes, Aman, that's correct.
Okay, cool. All right, so let me share my screen. Okay, all right. So again, going further on what Shahzad mentioned, the aspects that we want to cover are the stuff that we're going to discuss, and you guys know the technical details, right? So from a security perspective, when you're thinking about security in a multi-cloud network, especially on an Aviatrix platform, there are two basic things that you're thinking about. One is that how to secure the control and management plane, and how to secure the data plane, right? So that's kind of one big ticket item. And the second thing is, how can you implement the Aviatrix platform security features for the applications and the workload, right? So the first piece, how to secure the Aviatrix infrastructure, is control plane, management plane, data plane. And the second thing is how to implement the Aviatrix security features that your end customer is going to leverage. So of course, when you're deploying the control plane pieces, you can deploy them in any cloud of your choice. So now, one of the things could be like, okay, why did you choose AWS versus Azure versus GCP? It may be as simple as, okay, customer is AWS centric or Azure centric, and that's where we chose. Other reasons could be where I added their optional components, right? So you may say, well, a customer was, multi-cloud, AWS and Azure, so we had a choice of putting the controller wherever we could. But when we looked, the customer was more comfortable with, for example, AWS security features because they were thinking of using, let's say, a load balancer in front of the controller, and they were thinking of using, some, AWS Shield or some other DDoS prevention or some, other aspects of the native platform to provide additional infrastructure level security. So those are some of the things that you want to think about. So if you put the controller out, did you just open it to 0.0 everything? How did you protect that? And same thing for Copilot. Now, also you have other things. For example, you have the gateways, which are kind of secure by default, but we manage that by the security group. So how are those managed? And then when you have third-party firewalls that are part of the infrastructure, so next-gen firewalls are there, maybe load balancer, F5 load balancer, or other kind of stuff is there, and how is that being protected? For example, you have the VM series, right? Okay, so how is it being managed? It's being managed by Panorama. Where does the Panorama sit? It's on-prem. Okay, how is the Panorama talking to the VM series? Or is it going over the internet, or it's taking a private path from on-prem to the cloud via the transit, right? So those are the kind of things that you want to think about when you're putting security controls around the Aviatrix infrastructure. Then thinking about the features to implement. So, all the features that are there are applicable. So some of this I already mentioned, putting in the infrastructure component behind load balancer, automatic security group management and stuff, RBAC, LDAP, MFA, SAML, all of these things are, Aviatrix infrastructure component security. And then, about audit compliance. So there are some auditing features that are included inside the controller, for example, route table audits and stuff. Then compliance control via features like, logging and what Copilot gives, like replay and threat IQ, threat guard, or those kind of things. And then integration with external logging is also, okay, what is the enterprise's standard logging mechanism? Okay, they use Splunk. All right, so do you have Aviatrix configured to export logs to Splunk? Yes or no, and so on and so forth. So you want to make sure that the security perspective, the infrastructure security is in play. And then it's about the Aviatrix features, which are implemented from day zero. For example, the data path encryption, MCNS, Firenet, egress control, threat IQ, threat guard, public subnet filtering, or other things that are deployed. And there may be some things that are not deployed today, but you are setting the stage for them. For example, the transits that you are deploying, are you deploying them as HPE enabled or no? Because later on, if the customer needs HPE, how is it gonna be handled, right? And let's say you don't have a use case for Firenet in one of the clouds. but are you deploying the transit to be Firenet ready or not? Because if you're not, then later on you may have to do a massive change to enable Firenet, right? So those are the kind of things as a design expert, you need to make sure that you're kind of prepared ahead of time, and you want to make sure the design is ready, as Shahzad said, future ready to cover these aspects. Any questions on this?
One question here on the security. So when we do indeed come up with our own problem statement, solve for our architecture, there are no minimum requirements that it has to be on certain commercial clouds or gov clouds. You guys don't differentiate as long as solution is complete. Okay.
Exactly. But the questions would be, why this, why that, why not that? What was the advantage? What are the things that you compared, right? Some of the things answers could be very simple. So for example, customer, was heavy in AWS and they wanted to use that. So that could be like a constraint that, hey, customer said that they want to use AWS to deploy the controller because of ABC reasons, right? So,
okay.
Cool. So in the next couple of slides, I just have some examples, right? So for example, deploying a load balancer in front of the controller to protect the controller from, being exposed to the internet. That's one thing. The other things are, better, let's say, logging mechanism that may come from the load balancer, some health check and stuff that you want to implement. The organization may be using load balancers extensively, and they have very well defined methods and processes to take care of load balancer integration, day-to operation perspective. So those are all the kind of stuff that you can think of when you are incorporating these native services into the design. Then other things around infrastructure security. So the questions would be, how did you secure the controller? How did you secure Copilot? How did you secure the gateways? How did you secure the firewalls? How did you secure login to the controller, right? Were you doing RBAC? All these kind of things, right? So thinking through those things in your design are gonna be important. Again, you can write chapters and chapters on this. I personally recommend using tables as much as possible. For example, the first column could be the requirement. The second column could be like the options, and third column could be like the design decisions, and fourth could be like the reasoning or something like that. A simple, so in a way that you're covering all the aspects in a concise manner, not that it's just filling up or writing a lot of content. That's not the purpose, and we don't want you guys to have to do that kind of stuff. It's just how can you, and as an architect, that's another critical thing. How can you present the information in a concise and consistent manner? So
can I ask something here?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So what you're saying in a table manner in a Word document, or is it in a presentation? I know there's a Word document we need to fill in. So you're referring to the Word document. Is that correct?
Yeah. So when you review the blueprint and the design submission document that's posted on the community site, I think Saad included that, you will have the template, and the template is available where like ABC, where you have to put stuff. Now, when you come, you will be presenting from a presentation, but at the same time, you will have access to your Word documents too.
Okay.
So you don't have to put everything into the slide. You probably want to keep the slides very high level, and then have the Word document available for reference if you wanted to just quickly say, hey, yeah, this is covered in my document, and here
the details in the document. Okay, that's typically we do on the customer. So
exactly. Yeah.
A follow-up to that question, if you don't mind, can I ask? Or
Yeah,
so that always makes me think, right? So there is 23rd submission deadline we have is to fill the Word document, and the slides we only carry with us when we defend that, right? Is that clear?
That's right.
Okay. Yeah, that almost makes me think that why can't we even have that template itself also? We follow the same structure, but we do it in PowerPoint, so that it will follow through. I mean, that's okay. That will reduce our work of, to your point, we don't have to write paras and paras, rather simplify with tables and diagrams.
Shazad, you want to talk
Yeah.
about? I think we have these.
I can
sample
talk about
controls,
that.
right?
Yeah, no, it's a good feedback actually. It's a good feedback to not only have the Word document, a template, Word document, but also a template for PowerPoint. And I think we should take this into account for the future defense. But I think for now, let's keep it this way.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Yeah, no, and then this is exactly the reason, this we are calling it a pilot program, because we are also in the process of improving it. So definitely your feedback is also very important here. And also when you're on site, we will be asking you more questions and we'll be gathering your feedback so we can improve this program further.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So one
hopefully
comment-
you can use our PPT as a template, hopefully.
Okay. Okay.
I'm just kidding.
So one comment that I have on this one, most of the time it becomes really difficult when you are trying to present something using a Word template. And then everything, whatever you wanted to present, you won't be able to unless it's a PowerPoint. So that's one of the things which we considered. But since you guys are mentioning this thing, let's roll it out. Let's see how it plays out. And then if there is still some feedback available for us, please do provide us that.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, moving forward, again, using the same template that Shazad showed, and with the animation. So these are, some of the different, security features, and you want to make sure that the key security features are implemented in your design, and also think about, like, especially for example, Firenet. You're thinking about, okay, can I do Firenet? So in Firenet, you have east-west, you have north-south, you have ingress, you have egress, right? So is your design collapsed where everything is happening in the same transit, or it's spread out across multiple transits, two transits? Are you doing ingress at the Firenet VPC VNet, or you have a dedicated ingress VPC VNet? Why one versus the other, right? Again, I'm just kind of trying to give you some ideas on the top things that you should think through, and those are the things that we will be asking you to provide further clarification during the design presentation defense and on the impromptu design as well. All right, and so that was high level on security. Any other question on security specifically? Okay, so we'll come back to
it. Yeah, one question. So hopefully this is like no vendor dependency, or if you don't know, you support that feature in your Aviatrix controller or Firenet. Is something we need to worry about as well, or?
Can you expand on that? What do you mean?
Like either using a third-party Palo Alto or any other components integration with your security, how that integration you'd like to see?
Yeah, I mean,
security.
Our integration with third party is pretty standard. There are a couple of aspects. One is the next-gen firewall, which is, Palo Alto, Checkpoint, any third party, which is standard integration. Then you have the security integration at a different level, which you may say analytics, right? You're sending stuff to Splunk or Datadog or CloudWatch or that kind of stuff, right? So those are all standard integration. As design expert, you expect of Aviatrix, you're expected to know what features Aviatrix provides in the currently GA product, right? So if, for example, somebody comes in and talks about a feature that Aviatrix doesn't even have, right? That means, you need to know more about the platform, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you need to know more about the Aviatrix platform, because at the end of the day, this is Aviatrix design expert certification, right? So like any other certification from Cisco, Juniper, VMware, the expectation is that you know in and out about the platform or the vendor supported features and whatnot, right? So anything is a fair game here.
Cool. All right, good question. Okay, so now next we're going to talk about cost optimization. So cost optimization is an interesting topic because and this is another thing, right? Besides just the actual, the process of going into DE, as design experts, you're cloud networking evangelists, right? So you should be very comfortable talking to people in the community, customers, peers, partners, about the Aviatrix platform. And one of the things where it often comes down to is cost, right? When enterprises are going to the cloud, the executives are often thinking that cloud is going to provide me everything out of the box. I don't need to go outside of the native to do anything. And when they find out that, especially network security, there's such a big gap, that's where it's an unexpected thing for them. So to be able to clearly articulate what Aviatrix provides, the value, and why it is important and better than native from a cost perspective is a very key thing that you will have to do day in, day out. So, however, from the ASDE perspective, there may be, there are some decisions which you have to, kind of weigh in. For example, where they will tie into other decisions, for example, performance, right? If you don't know what the performance is required, you shouldn't go in and get the highest sized gateway, because that's not going to be the right decision from a cost perspective, right? So how do you optimize your design for cost is something that you need to be cognizant of and aware of when you are doing the design. And those are the things that we will ask you on. So for example, Aviatrix provides flexible deployment model, like customers can size their environment as their needs. So identifying the components that need to be sized, there are components that are native, you don't really have to worry about their sizing, but then there are components that you need to make sure that your design, it has adequate sizing in that. And then the reasons and rationales behind those choices, right? Why you chose one thing versus the other, like why you chose HP versus standard, right? Are some of the things. So how, where you would do it is that in the design, in the documents, you'll clearly identify the requirement and of course make assumptions where needed. And the assumption, especially when South covers the performance, is going to come because oftentimes the Aviatrix infrastructure sizing depends on the requirement. And sometimes there are customers who would say, well, I don't really know, right? How much per VPC traffic, egress traffic you need? I don't know, right? Is it 100 meg? Is it 500 meg? It's 1 gig, it's 10 gig. Well, a lot of them don't really know, right? So you may have to make some adjustments. Another thing you should be comfortable is Aviatrix pricing. Not from like a dollar value, but being able to explain what are some of the pricing options or models are, and other things which impact, for example, insane mode versus standard mode, as an example, right? And then, as I mentioned, infrastructure sizing. So in that, the controller sizing, copilot sizing, gateway sizing, then making smart choices, for example, using reserved instance or preferred instance or committed use, like, whatever the different cloud providers say, using them, because Aviatrix components are infrastructure component. Now, when you're explaining it to customers, the way you present it is going to be, well, how many instances you have in a VPC? I have, let's say, on an average 100 instance. So 2 gateways is like 2% infrastructure or on top of that, which is like very minimal. If you don't put it in that way, customers will get confused. The second thing is these components are not going away. So why pay metered costs? You should get reserved instance, so you get 60-70% discount on those. So the cost of the infrastructure is gonna go down even more, right? Then from a cost optimization perspective, is the customer using NSG flow logs, VPC flow logs for everything? Aviatrix provides NetFlow free of charge, right, as part of Copilot. So leveraging that, and to reduce the cost that the customer may have, right? Other things are, single gateway versus active gateway. So Aviatrix has a single AC HFA option, where for environments that are like very low priority SLAs, couple of minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes SLAs are fine. Does the customer want to use single gateway versus going multi-gateways, right? Then stuff like native peering versus spoke gateways, right? Hey, in Azure you can do native peering. Should you use native peering or should you use the spoke gateways? Are all the different questions that you need to think through when you are doing your design from a cost perspective. Also in that, knowing that Aviatrix doesn't really charge for gateways, right? So whether the customer puts a gateway or doesn't put a gateway, it doesn't make any change to their Aviatrix cost, right? So knowing these kind of aspects are going to be very critical. And I think we'll come back to this when we talk about performance, because in performance, the major thing about gateway sizing is going to come as well. Now, I just wanted to give you a couple of visuals, and this is available. Most of this is available outside as well. Is that you have two deployment options, right? You have a meter deployment option, which when you go to the any cloud provider and you just deploy from the cloud marketplace, and you just pay via the AWS Azure Marketplace directly, right? So what are the costs and how do you find it, right? It's published on the marketplaces. It's clearly identified. For example, 21 cents a tunnel for intra-cloud, and inter-cloud is basically any time when you're going to on-prem, you're going between clouds, that's inter-cloud, right? It's not very complicated. It's very simple. And then the other model is the node model, which is for large scale customers, and very simple to calculate. What is a node? Any network under management is a node. And we calculate the number of nodes and prices, number of node per node count. So it's very deterministic. And then there are other aspects to it. Essentially what we're trying to do is make sure that the customers have a deterministic way of finding out how the cost of the Aviatrix environment is going to be, and how they can optimize for it in an ongoing perspective by sizing the components appropriately. Any question on this?
This is Mohammed Said. So do you have any cost calculator or the link where we can find all of these costs related to?
Yes. So there are only two costs, right? So there's the metered is posted on the marketplace. So if you go to AWS Marketplace and click on Aviatrix controller, and I'll find the link for you. It is posted there already.
Okay, and what about basically if we want to go on per node basis, like where we can find that information?
Yeah, that's the sales team, right? That will come into play. Yeah, but from an ACE DE perspective, the reason we're including this here is that when you're making your decisions about a design, you got to think through these things as well, right? So that's the only reason why we are including it, that, hey, when you do a design, if we see a design where every gateway is C5 18x large, right? Then, all right, did you actually need that, or that kind of stuff?
Exactly. Like I asked this question because right now I'm actually facing this. Like, when we present the information to the, let's say, director of network services, he's basically coming back straight. He said, okay, give me like how much it would cost me. So it is important.
Yeah, in that, then that means you need to involve the Aviatrix, your account team, to help you with those exact calculations.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Absolutely. All right, Saad, over to you.
One question, sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
So cost is interesting aspect, right? So let's say we're doing mostly the Aviatrix components, but the design that we're putting together requires some actually setting up some appliances like VM series appliances, Palo Alto, within the same, whatever our design says. You guys look into that aspect of the design, or you don't even consider that as a cost? Because that is a significant cost. We did one demo, we set it up, and in order to give the whole picture, it's not the Aviatrix, but rather any firewalls and GW that we wanted to do, we should account for that too. So do you consider that as an aspect of this architecture from a cost realm, or you don't do that when you rate or whatever you guys do on our designs?
Yeah, to answer your question on that, for example, I mean, if you have a requirement of doing any kind of east-west inspection, and the east-west inspection, different ways, different architects, at their understanding of the cloud architecture and then the native constructs, they try to build the design in a different ways. For example, they are putting the firewalls in every single VPCs versus in a centralized location. Those are also the areas which are going to impact on your overall cost. Those are the areas definitely we are going to look at, like, how you are using or architecting your environment.
Okay, I am saying, so you're going to look into that cost. Let's say our requirement says that you have to help in the traffic through this, then you will consider that is considered in the design or not. Okay, got it.
Yeah. Okay, so now performance, right? That's another pillar. And can you guys see my screen now?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. All right, in order to achieve the optimal performance for your single cloud or your multi-cloud environment, different factors, seems to be considered. For example, the bandwidth, latency, retransmission. All of these factors, the typical architect and network engineers, they consider when they are building their designs or architectures. Some other areas are heavily dependent on the use cases and the customer requirements. Performance is not like 0 or 1, it's kind of binary thing. Performance means different things to different people based on the use cases and then the business and technical requirements. For example, you only have the option of the public circuit, then you understand your performance is going to take a hit, right? You are going to incur more latency than in the private circuits. At the same time, your bandwidth, your throughput requirement may not be more than 1 gig. I'm just giving you some numbers right now. There are certain providers who can provide you 5 gigs of internet circuit as well. But just an FYI, the performance definitely depends on the use cases and your requirements. At the same time, when you are building an architecture and this architecture requires some compliance, then that only compliance is going to have an overall impact on your overall design too. So you have to make a lot of changes, and based on the changes, the performance is going to be different, which is expected under the SLA. Everything is good, and that's how you should consider. Now, from the application perspective, you have some standard applications, maybe some web-based application versus some application that requires you to do some kind of a data application. For that, you might want to consider high throughput from your virtual cloud network versus a standard application that does not require that kind of a throughput. So all those things actually are important, and you have to consider when you are designing your environment. So where are we going to consider the performance? One area I just mentioned is a virtual cloud network. Virtual cloud network is a VPC, VNet, VCN, anything. And then these VPC, VCN, and the VNets, they could be in different regions. It could be across multi-cloud environment. And what about them? And if you are using for your hybrid cloud connectivity, you are using colos like Equinix or Megaport. What kind of performance you are looking for? One item is, okay, I am going to get more throughput by buying high throughput DX, ERs, cloud interconnects, fast connects, and all those kind of things. But there are some other aspects also. I don't only need these private circuits, but I also wanted to have the security on top of these private circuits, like some kind of encryption enabled. How am I going to achieve those areas too? Then also the next generation firewalls. There are so many factors which we have to consider how we are going to insert that, the next generation firewalls in the network that is performance impacting as well. So now let's talk about the different connectivity options. We do have different approaches. Different times you might have heard from all of us. We use two different terms interchangeably. One is high performance encryption, and then the second term is insane mode. So right now we are talking about the standard connectivity. If you are working on a design which is spread across multiple regions, here in this picture, region 1 and region 2, and your business and technical requirement does not require you to have high performance encryption, then you can come up with a design like the one which I am just showing you on the screen. What about if you have a multi-cloud environment? Exactly the same, right? This time you wanted to have the internet as a underlay, and on the underlay, you are creating the connectivity between your CSP1 and CSP2. Everything over here so far, what we discussed is a standard connectivity, which basically means utilizing our active mesh technology, which builds 2 tunnels from each gateway, a total of 4 tunnels from each virtual cloud network. Now, the second option, which again, depending on your technical and business requirements, is high performance connectivity. This high performance connectivity could be within a region, within a CSP, across the CSP, and also to the hybrid cloud. Right now, if you take a look at it, these lines that I'm showing you, this is not a single tunnel. These are multiple tunnels based on the size of the gateways that you are going to pick. So consider that when there is a requirement provided to you by the different business units or different customers or partners, then these are things which you have to consider: what size of the gateways, because it all depends on the size of the gateway and the number of the tunnels it's going to create. What about if you have a colo like Equinix or Megaport? At that point, you also wanted to achieve the high performance, not only through the private circuits, but also you wanted to have some kind of encryption built into the architecture. So this is another architecture. This is applicable for between the CSPs, which is a multi-cloud environment, or for a single cloud customers as well. Any questions on these slides before I move forward to the next one? Okay. So the next one is, what are the other areas of the performance which you guys have to consider when you are architecting a cloud environment? Next generation firewalls. We just gave you a hint. Like, there are many ways to insert the next generation firewalls into your design. One way is, okay, I just really need to get this thing out. I really don't care whether this is going to have a headache for my manageability or not. I'm going to create the IPsec tunnels to my firewalls, and then just for exchanging the routes, I'm going to use the BGP. Yes, it's going to get the job done, but whether are you going to get the optimal performance by doing something like this or not? Are you creating a design in which there is the firewall insertion at the centralized level, or it's somewhere distributed? All those kind of things which you have to consider when you are inserting the next generation firewalls into your designs. Hybrid cloud connectivity. That is also a very critical piece, because for you as a cloud architect, you might have different branches, different data centers, maybe different customers, different partners, or maybe your end customers if you are a SaaS provider, right? Different types of requirements you have. You wanted to bring in a different end customer or a partner using a static connectivity, or maybe sometimes you want to bring them in with the BGP, right? So, okay, BGP is great because it's going to provide you a dynamic nature of exchanging the routes. But where am I going to build this BGP adjacency with? Which which portion of the Aviatrix architecture is it going to be the transit gateways, or am I going to build this with the spoke gateways? The architecture is going to change a little bit. What makes more sense? What is going to provide you more scalability, right? And these are basically the things which you have to consider when you are building a design. From the sizing perspective, gateways, extremely critical. You guys have noticed in your current environment as well. And when you are doing it, either it's for fictitious design or your actual design, the gateway size is playing an important role. For example, if the technical requirement is to provide 5 gigs of throughput from a virtual cloud network, then are you going to use a gateway size that is capable of providing you a 5 gigs of throughput or 2.5 gigs of throughput? Because in every single virtual cloud network, we have 2 Aviatrix gateways. So this is another important area which we will have to consider. Now, the sizing of the controller and copilot. Hamad actually touched base a little bit on it. So let me just double click on this controller and copilot size. If you have an environment of 100 gateways versus 10,000 gateways, right? The size of the controller and copilot definitely going to change. You have to make sure like what is coming in the new feature. So based on that, you have to resize your controller and the copilot accordingly. Any questions on performance? Okay, seems like we are all good. All right, so moving forward with the last but not least, business continuity. We have heard a lot about, okay, I have created my architecture, and then I wanted to make sure if something happens in any region, any availability zone, then I always have a plan to deal with those kind of business impacting situations, right? And my enterprise, my business must continue to work with as little disruption as possible. As long as this is under my SLA, I'm good. If this is beyond my SLA, that is the time when I struggle. That is the time when I have to actually go and talk to somebody much higher than the above our pay grades. So those are the uncomfortable situations which we will always want to avoid with the business continuity. So this business continuity, we need to first discuss from the control plane perspective, and then we will move into the data plane perspective. Now let's talk about the controller HA. Again, depending on what kind of customer environment you are building. Are you building a single region? The requirement from the business is as long as one of the availability zone is always available, you're good. Then you can have the Aviatrix HA enabled in multiple availability zone, like the one I'm showing you right now. And then it is going to just bring up the Aviatrix controller, and you should be good to go. You should be good to go if one of the availability zone goes down. So that's all good. But what about if you are planning to do or planning to have this kind of redundancy or business continuity from the perspective of the Aviatrix controller across multiple regions? At that point, you want to make sure that you should have a cold standby Aviatrix controller available in a different region. And then if something happens, then you have everything backed up properly, and then you can just bring that other region's controller up and run it. So that is your multi-region HA for your controller. Similar kind of stuff you can achieve for multi-cloud environment as well. Again, for multi-region and multi-cloud, there are certain things which you have to consider. For example, the allocation of the static or EIPs for your cold standby Aviatrix controller. You have to have that, because at that time of the panic, you really don't want to do something which you have not done. You should have your cold standby controller up and ready, and all you have to do at that point is to just do the recovery, like of the configuration, and make this thing as your primary controller at that point. You also wanted to make sure that your firewall must already be allowing that particular static IP or the EIP. Otherwise, if you don't allow it, then it's going to be an issue, and then nothing seems to be working at that point of panic time. Okay. We continue talking about the backup and restore. Basically, we are still discussing the control plane aspect. Make sure that you always have a backup and restore plan ready for your controller. There are multiple options even for the backup. There is a single backup, and then there are multiple backups, which means it will continue to back your configurations, whatever you set up in the controller policy. There are, if requirements are from the reconvergence perspective, Aviatrix provides different types of functionality to you, like tunnel detection time. They're the keep alive times, right? All these configurable parameters have an impact on the reconvergence. Make sure what are the requirements. Based on the requirements, you can tweak these values as well. And that is going to help improve the reconvergence too. Most of the time, the standard default values are good enough for the customer, but there are certain times when customer requires much faster reconvergence, and then you can utilize these values over here. Okay, so now let's talk about the data plane perspective. We are discussing the business continuity, right? Shahzad discussed it a little bit, but this is a little bit different because we are talking about from the infrastructure, network infrastructure, where you are deploying the Aviatrix gateways in different availability zones. That is going to provide you a regional level or availability zone level of business continuity from the network infrastructure perspective. The requirement goes with the multiple regions. Then your architecture is going to look something like this. Now you have a requirement for multi-cloud environment. In multi-cloud environment, your architecture is going to look something like this. So whatever you see on the screen right now, this is from the infrastructure, like network infrastructure perspective. You still have to consider your applications. So if something goes down, maybe the region goes down, the availability zone goes down, how are you going to make your application available in a different availability zone across the region or in multi-cloud environment? So those are two separate things, but both goes, side by side with each other. Any questions? Are we good?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, so that's great. So from like we discussed all the design pillars, and that's exactly what we want you guys to consider, all those design pillars when you are documenting and creating your designs and submitting to us. And basically, once you become the ASDE, so what could be your incentive, right, to become the ASDE? One of the best incentive is learning opportunity. You know how to design. You got a little bit of taste during our ACE professional, but this is like, one big step ahead. You will be in the, elites of the elites kind of, category at that point. We will provide you some of the things which we can do, something like a recognition at altitude. We can provide you some kind of speaking. You can do some public speaking in the conference also. Regional meetup group, speaking opportunity. Podcast. So we do have Aviatrix podcast. We can invite you over there. So that will give you a lot of visibility. And elite profiles on our website. So in our ASDE section, you guys will be there because you guys are the elites of the elites. And then there will be some other shields and certificates and all those kind of aspects as well, part of the ACE. So with that, before I close, I have almost everybody has already confirmed your in-person attendance, which is towards the end of this month. I just wanted to make sure if there is anybody on this call which is planning not to attend the in-person. Is there anybody? Okay, so I assume all of you guys will be in person.
Oh, one question related to the templates. You guys have a standard downloadable stencil or a templates for all the Aviatrix icons somewhere in the either partner portal or the community portal we can download?
Yeah, we can definitely share that with you.
Okay.
With this particular slide deck that which we are going to share with you, we can actually we can share the Lucid chart, which has all our icons in there, so you can use that.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that works. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Saad, do we have an opportunity to listen to other 10 people design during the 2 days?
Are you
I
going to
think-
have the opportunity?
Do we have the opportunity to listening to other people design? We have 10 people on the call or maybe 7 people
Shazad, you
during
were saying
the
something.
2 days?
Yeah, I was about to say that due to confidentiality reasons, I think it might not be possible, because what if someone is submitting a real design with some information that he or she does not want to share?
Okay. Okay. I'm just thinking about the learning perspective because,
Yeah, your point is valid from the learning point of view, but unfortunately, what I have seen in the past, being part of Cisco and then VMware certification tracks, people actually don't like this idea to present in front of maybe a competitor, maybe a partner competitor, or maybe a design that is very unique, that can expose some of the internal facts about the organization.
Fair enough.
Yeah, there are certain times when architects will be presenting their own architecture, so that could be a problem. So that's why we won't do that. Any other questions before we close the call?
No,
All
I
right.
just want to say thank you, Saad and the team. I think we are excited. I'm excited at least.
Yep, definitely.
Same
I
here.
second the
Yeah.
thoughts. Yeah. Thanks for your
That's
time.
great. Yeah, that's great. So again, welcome and good luck to all of you guys. And then if you have any questions, then please reach out to us using the ACE form. We are going to share that information with you. And we also are going to share the recording just in case, if you wanted to go over one more time.
One last
Perfect.
question. So it's a 23 is what mentioned. Is there a time that we need to submit before 23 deadline? For
Yeah, by 23rd. So not before, by 23rd. I mean, you can submit it on 23rd as well. And then you just come to Dallas, and then we can discuss. Like you have to, at that point you have to defend your design.
Sure. So 23, like EOD 23. That's all.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. All right. Sounds great. Hamad, Shazad, anything else before we close the call?
No, I'm good. I'm excited.
Same
All right,
here.
guys. Thank you.
Thanks
Right, thank
everyone.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Bye.
guys. Bye.
Thank you.